Thank you for joining the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Northwestern Division for today's Missouri River Basin Water Management Conference Call and Webinar. This call is a part of a series of calls, and it is open to stakeholders as we provide updates from January through June on the status of runoff in the Missouri River Basin. These calls are recorded and placed on the Defense Video and Imagery Distribution System at www.dvidss.unit/USACE-NWD. Your participation acknowledges your consent to be recorded. All lines have been placed on mute. Please be aware that the forced mute function may not work on all phones, so if I ask, please use your phone's own mute function to avoid interrupting the call, and do not place the call on hold. With our new WebEx system, you may need to unmute on both your video screen as well as your phone to ask a question. Our speakers today include Doug Cluck from NOAA and Kevin Lau from the National Weather Service, John Remus and Kevin Brody and Joel Knopczynski from the Missouri River Basin Water Management Division. And John, did you have any opening remarks?
I'll give some remarks after Doug and Kevin Lau provide their information.
Fine, then we'll hand it over to you, Doug.
Okay. Go ahead and just go to the next slide. We'll get started right away. Yep, I work for NOAA. I sit in Kansas City. We're going to do a summary of conditions since October, more or less, and then to put things in perspective and a little bit on the outlook. First of all, the last 90 days, in terms of temperature and precipitation, temperature on the left, precipitation on the right. You'll see that in some of these graphics may be a little bit difficult to discern. They don't come through as well when we put them into this platform. But those are states and counties, and mainly we're looking at the Missouri Basin there. Hopefully you can see the state boundaries. Where you see red, orange, light tan colors, and even yellow, those indicate above normal temperatures. So the last 90 days, especially where you see the red, have been quite a bit above normal. So I suppose in North Dakota, no offense, but that probably means 20 degrees as opposed to minus 20 degrees. Nonetheless, it's been warm across almost the entire basin since when you accumulate all the heating together since the beginning of October. We did have a short period in October of really cold temperatures. In terms of precipitation, you can look at that graphic on the lower right, and you see pretty much only Montana has above normal, sort of consistent area, large area of above normal precipitation, and most of that fell, I'd say October, November, as opposed to later in the period. Those red areas indicate substantially below normal precipitation. Now, that said, this isn't the wettest time of year in a lot of these areas. So are we missing that much? Well, no, but this precipitation is important in the longer scheme of things in terms of what will come down in the spring and replenishing soil moisture, at depth. So let's go to the next slide. Last 30 days, so since more or less the beginning of December through yesterday or the day before yesterday. Well, we see, again, temperature on the left, and again, quite a bit of red and deep red, if you will, especially in Montana and North Dakota, and more or less above normal temperatures across the entire area. And a couple things about this is the other thing we want to remember about above normal temperatures means we're also getting a little bit more evaporation than we normally would with a colder temperature regime, if that makes sense to you. So when the winds are blowing and it's a little bit warmer than normal, we can evaporate more. So we have to remember that as we move through the season here. On the right is the precipitation percent of normal, and for the same period, last 30 days more or less, and you can see some drier areas. The deeper reds indicate the drier areas, and yellows, everything yellow to red, I guess you could say, are drier than normal, and the blues and purples and greens are above normal. Pretty thin areas of above normal, in Nebraska and across portions of eastern Kansas and such. But really, for the most part, we're leaning towards a drier regime in the last 30 days as well. Next slide. So one thing those maps that we just showed you don't really give you a good indication of is what's going on in the mountains and mountain snowpack. This is better. Those numbers that are hard to see in there indicate the percent of normal water equivalent, we like to say, in the mountains at higher elevations. So where you see 100%, we're right at where we should be as of January 6th, or what is normal as opposed to as opposed to what we see here. So what we're really showing here is that Wyoming, northern Colorado, those areas for the most part are below normal. As you go north a little further, and that oval is really sorta the Missouri Basin headwaters. You get a little bit more towards normal snowpack, but you're going to see from other people here a little more indication of how wet or dry we are in terms of snowpack. So let's go to the next slide. This is lower elevation. You can see the higher elevation there too, but really this is for lower elevation plains, if you will, snowpack. And where you don't see gray or kind of the bluish colors, there's no snow, no recordable, no snow present. So as of the January 6th, a big swath there, pretty much along the Missouri River Basin, is snow-free. You do see eastern Dakotas and eastern Nebraska and even northern Missouri and western Iowa with some snow on the ground, but it's not that much. Right around Omaha, maybe you could squeeze out an inch or two, but certainly upstream, we don't have a snowpack. And compared to normal, this is a little lower than normal for this time of year. It can be made up in a couple weeks, as you all know. A lot of snow can fall, but as of right now, we're sort of in a below normal snowpack. Next slide. Okay, is this the updated one? No. Well, there is an updated map of this, and really doesn't differ that much from this one, except to say it's a little drier even across the Missouri Basin. You'll just have to take my word for it. But we don't see in the next 7 days, if you add up all the precipitation that's going to fall, any major precipitation events happening. So let's go to the next slide. This is the outlook for temperature on the left, precipitation on the right. Temperature on the left shows the probability of above normal temperatures enhanced across, we'll just say, pretty much the entire basin. And but it's not strongly enhanced. It's not like it's only like 40% chance of above normal above normal temperature. So that's kind of a lukewarm, if you will, of outlook for temperatures. Now we're talking week 2, which is the 14th to the 20th of January. And then also week 2 in terms of precipitation, we are seeing an enhanced probability for precipitation across pretty much the whole, at least the upper 2/3 or 3/4 of the basin. A little bit drier as you go to the south and east, actually, on this map. So better chances of above normal precipitation, maybe a front coming through there. Week 2. So, like I said, 14th to 20th. Next slide. This is the January temperature and precipitation outlook. Again, those colors on the left are temperature, or the map on the left is temperature, and the entire basin, and really most of the U.S. except for the Southwest, has a higher probability than normal of above normal temperatures. Okay, that's the outlook for January. Precipitation-wise, wherever you see green, there's an enhanced probability of above normal precipitation. Really, for the Missouri Basin, that is the lower basin into, I guess, South Dakota to some degree, but really the lower and eastern portions of the basin is the outlook there. And then EC, which is equal chances for above, below, or near normal. So, it's equal chance of above or below in the rest of the area. Next slide. So this is the longer term January, February, and March outlook. This pattern that you see, and there is a pattern here, really shows what we call a La Nina signature. And La Nina, without going into great detail, is an influencer on what may happen in the forecast. It helps us, well, we think it helps us forecast temperature and precipitation to some degree. You see those blue colors on the temperature on the left graphic. The blue colors there indicate better chances for below normal temperatures in North Dakota and Montana. So that'd be upper basin. And then better chances, but not strong, better chances of above normal temperatures, say south of Omaha and southwest and southeast of there. So if you averaged all 3 months together, that's sort of the outlook for temperature. And for precipitation for the same 3 months, you get this pattern of above normal precipitation probabilities up in Montana mainly, and obviously in the Ohio Valley, but also a dry tongue, we call it a dry tongue, if you will, sort of pushing up into Kansas, Colorado, and Nebraska, something we're watching, especially because there is already quite a bit of drought across those areas. And winter is not usually the time in which we change drought categories, and we'll get to that. Maybe the next slide, actually. So go ahead. Yeah. So the image on the left is the current drought monitor. Actually, let's see what it says. Yeah, it probably got updated today, and I'm sorry I didn't get it in there on time. But it won't be that much different than what this is showing. It basically indicates that a large portion of the basin is covered in some sort of drought. Where you see white, there is no drought. Where you see yellow, it's not officially drought. It's just getting there, if you will. Where you see reds and deep reds, that's getting towards the worst case scenarios in eastern Colorado and portions of Nebraska and Wyoming, and even portions of North Dakota and Iowa and southeast South Dakota have a little bit of that, what we call D3 extreme drought in it. Again, it's hard to change these values often during the winter time because we don't get big, heavy precipitation events like we do, let's say, in the spring. In terms of an outlook for drought, the map on the right, wherever you see brown, that's an indicator that the forecasters think that conditions really aren't going to change that much through the end of March. Where you see yellow, they do believe that it's likely that drought will develop in those areas. And that fits pretty well with the outlook that we saw a little bit earlier. And then I guess the final slide, I think. So the key points here is we are in a La Nina situation. You saw that final outlook map for temperature and precipitation favors cool and wet north, dry and warm south. The plains snowpack is below normal for the most part, mostly East Basin. Mountain snowpack, I'll say average to below normal, especially to the south. In terms of the short-term outlook for temperatures, warmer than normal, and precipitation slightly favors above normal. Hopefully we can get some of that. Longer term, colder than normal, more likely in the northwest portion headwaters, and increased likelihood of above normal temperatures in the south, especially southwest, and precipitation mainly enhanced, again, northwest, and drier more likely in the south, southwest. Our next monthly climate summary and outlook will be January 21st at 1 p.m. I didn't put that in there. And there's the way to register if you want to go to that webinar. We do it every month. If you have any questions about it, you can always write me an email. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. And over to you, Kevin Lau.
All righty. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
All righty. Thank you, Eileen. And on behalf of the National Weather Service, I do wish to thank the Corps of Engineers for having both Doug and myself on these series of calls. And good afternoon. My name is Kevin Lau, and I work with the National Weather Service Missouri Basin River Forecast Center located in Kansas City. I'll be repeating a little bit of what Doug said. As Doug said, snowpack conditions in the mountains can be generally categorized as near to below normal. By this point in the winter, we have normally accumulated about 40% of the seasonal peak snow water equivalent in the mountains. And so, as I say every year, we are still very early on in the season, and much could change. The January water supply forecasts that were issued or developed by the National Weather Service, they were issued this past Monday, and our water supply forecast suggests a below normal runoff season for the period April through September. Again, as Doug said, plain snow is pretty much limited to the extreme eastern portion of the basin, where trace to 1 inch amounts of snow water equivalent are sitting on the ground across the eastern Dakotas, extreme eastern Nebraska, Iowa, and northern Missouri. The big story, of course, is the ongoing drought. As Doug mentioned, soils across the majority of the basin are dry to extremely dry. 91% of the basin is classified as being abnormally dry or worse. And thus, there has been limited flooding across the basin this fall and winter, which is good news. In late November, we had a couple of small tributaries in south central Missouri to experience minor flooding to roughly a 2-inch rain event. That was in late November. In early December, the Jefferson River at Three Forks, Montana, did reach minor flood stage due to ice action and actually remained near flood stage until the past 24 hours, and now it's beginning to fall. River ice action also caused the North Platte River at Llewellyn, Nebraska, to just reach minor flood stage earlier this week. But the river has now fallen well below flood stage. And finally, I will mention the Niobrara River near Verdale, North Dakota. And although it has not seen minor flood stage, it did rise pretty close to minor flood stage and remained there for several days. I think this morning it's starting to come down, though. Again, all this due to river ice action. Looking ahead, our office issues 90-day or 3-month river outlooks toward the end of each month. The last one we issued was Christmas week and covers the 3-month period ending in mid to late March. And the outlook that we just issued indicates that the only areas of the Missouri River Basin that have a greater than a 50-50 chance to see flooding between now and mid-March is located in south central Missouri, and that's reflected in the graphic that you see on the slide with little colored dots. And this is typical. Risk for flooding between now and mid-March is dependent upon the timing and location of any plain snowmelt, rain on snow events, and rain events. And ice jam flooding is also or will remain a possibility throughout the winter. As we near the end of the next 3 months, which would be late March, we then have to begin to think about thunderstorm activity, and that drives the springtime flooding in the lower basin. The National Weather Service will be issuing its first official spring flood outlook on Thursday, February the 11th, and that will provide the first official National Weather Service quantification of flood potential for this spring and early summer. And once that is issued, it can be found at the link shown on the slide. Again, that will be on February the 11th. Thank you, and this concludes the National Weather Service Flood Potential Brief.
Thanks, Kevin. And I'm going to hand it over to you, John Remus. And since you guys are all together, I'll just let you move from one speaker to the next without transitioning back to me.
Thank you, Arlene. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Remus, Chief of the Missouri River Basin Water Management Division. Our office is responsible for regulating the Missouri River Mainstem Reservoir System. I will provide some general remarks, and then I will turn the discussion over to two of my senior staff for more detailed information. As we begin a new year, I want to assure everyone in the basin that the Corps remains fully committed to our flood risk reduction mission, protecting stakeholders when we can from significant runoff events that pose a threat to human health and safety. Floods can and will occur regardless of basin conditions, including ice-induced flooding during the winter freeze-in and spring breakup periods, and flooding due to thunderstorms, particularly along the lower Missouri River, which cannot be mitigated by the operation of the mainstem reservoirs. Further, it is important to understand that the volume, timing, and location at which runoff enters the system significantly impacts the timing and amount of releases. We are also committed to supporting the authorized purposes as outlined in the Master Manual. We will continue to meet our statutory obligations to operate the Missouri River Mainstem Reservoir System for its authorized purposes, as described in the Master Manual and as outlined in the 2018 Biological Opinion. I want to make sure everybody understands that each runoff season or flood event is unique, and care should be taken when comparing one event to another. After 2 years of very high runoff, 2020 was somewhat of a transition year. 2020 began with above-average runoff in the upper basin. However, as the year progressed, much of the basin entered into a drought, as was shown by Doug Cluck. This required a shift in our management focus from evacuation of floodwater to meeting downstream flow targets. As of today, the reservoir system is in very good shape from both a flood control and a flow support point of view. Kevin Grody and Joel Komchinsky will provide more details in a few minutes. On December 29th, we posted the 2020-21 Annual Operating Plan, or AOP, on our website. I want to thank everyone that provided comments on the draft AOP. We will be sending out hard copies of the AOP to those individuals and organizations on our AOP mailing list. I want everybody to know that the 2020-21 AOP will be the last one that will be provided in hard copy format. All future AOPs will be available digitally through our webpage. We posted our first 2021 Upper Basin runoff forecast earlier this week. Kevin Grody will provide more details on the runoff forecast. I want to remind everyone that the runoff forecast is based on the best available information. As Doug and Kevin both said, it is at the very beginning of the runoff season, and the snowpack accumulation, the snow accumulation period. The runoff forecast can and will likely change. That concludes my opening remarks. Thank you very much, and I will turn the discussion over to Kevin Grody.
Thanks, John. So I am on slide 16. The 2020 calendar year runoff summation for the Missouri Basin above Sioux City, Iowa, the upper Missouri River Basin, was 31.1 million acre feet, 121% of average, which is just above an upper quartile runoff. The 2021 calendar year runoff forecast, which is highlighted in red for the upper Missouri River Basin above Sioux City, is 23.1 million acre feet, or 90% of average. I'm now moving to slide 17. The below average runoff forecast for 2021 reflects current drier than normal soil moisture throughout the basin and below average plains and mountain snow. As seen As seen on this slide, we are expecting below average runoff during the high runoff periods from March through July when the plains and mountain snow melts. I'm now moving to slide 18. As Doug Cluck already indicated, soil moisture is very dry in areas of Colorado and Wyoming and portions of Montana and North Dakota. In fact, there are no areas in the Missouri Basin where soil moisture is wetter than normal. Moving on to slide 19. Again, as Doug indicated, the plain snowpack, which typically melts from mid-February into April, is currently very low to non-existent. The plain snow that exists is concentrated in eastern Nebraska, eastern South Dakota, and eastern North Dakota. Now moving to slide 20. Mountain snowpack is accumulating at below average rates in both reaches, above Fort Peck and Fort Peck to Garrison. It is important to note that the majority of the mountain snowfall typically falls between January 1 to mid-April. So in summary, the 2021 calendar year runoff forecast is 23.1 million acre feet, 90% of average. I will now turn this over to Joel.
Thank you, Kevin. Gavin's Point releases averaged 17,000 cubic feet per second in December. Releases from Gavin's Point are expected to remain near that rate through February. Garrison releases were set at 16,000 cubic feet per second in December. Releases will remain near that rate during the first part of January in anticipation of the river freezing in. Once the river freezes in and stages in the Bismarck area stabilize, releases will be gradually increased to 23,000 cubic feet per second and remain near that rate through February, downstream conditions permitting. Moving on to the monthly simulations, the basic simulation uses the runoff forecast that Kevin just discussed. Due to the amount of variability in precipitation and other hydrologic factors that can occur over the next several months, we also develop an upper and lower runoff that are then used in the upper and lower basic simulations. These simulations provide a range of reservoir elevations and releases that may be expected under the different runoff scenarios. The discussion to follow will focus on the basic or most likely runoff forecast. Information on the other runoff simulations is posted on our webpage. On December 21, the reservoir system storage reached 56.1 million acre feet, which is the base of the annual flood control zone. This means that all the stored 2020 floodwater has been evacuated from the system. Currently, the system storage is at 56.0 million acre feet. On March 1, which is typically near the start of the runoff season, the basic simulation shows system storage at 56.0 million acre feet, just slightly below the base of the annual flood control zone, and that all 16.3 million acre feet of flood control capacity will be available. Moving on to slide 23, and looking at the upper three reservoirs, Fort Peck and Garrison are currently 1.6 and 1.0 feet above the base of their respective flood control pools, while Oahe is 0.6 feet below the base of the flood control pool. At the end of February, the basic simulation shows Fort Peck, Garrison, and Oahe will be just below the base of their flood control pools. Now to slide 24. Navigation service level and season length. The service level is used to determine releases from Gavin's Point Dam to support navigation and to help provide an 8 to 9 foot deep navigation channel downstream. The navigation service level at the start of the navigation season is typically based on the March 15 system storage. Under the basic simulation, we would be providing full service flow support for the first part of the navigation season. Full service flow support is designed to provide a 9 foot deep navigation channel. For the full service level on the basic simulation, Gavin's Point monthly average releases range from approximately 27,000 cubic feet per second to 32,000 cubic feet per second. The service level for the remainder of the navigation season and the navigation season length are based on the July 1 system storage. Under the basic forecast, flow support for the navigation would be at full service after the July 1 storage check, and a full 8-month navigation season would be provided. Energy generation at the main stem dams in 2020 was 10.1 billion kilowatt hours. The long-term average is 9.4 billion kilowatt hours. The forecast for 2021 with the basic simulation is 9.7 billion kilowatt hours. Moving on to slide 25, this shows the Missouri River Basin weekly update, which is found on our website at the address shown on the top of the slide. This webpage gives a general overview of the current conditions in the Missouri River Basin and is updated weekly, usually on Tuesday morning. Thank you, and this concludes my talk.
Back to you, Eileen.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to hand it over to you, Mike Doolin in Kansas City.
Yeah, hey, this is Mike. I'm here.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I had to take myself off speaker there. Hey, thanks for having me today. So talking about Kansas City District levee rehab, as the National Weather Service showed, this winter we've really had good construction weather. So our contractor's been making pretty good progress up and down the river. Right now, we've got 49 of 56 levee repair contracts are awarded. Many of those are complete. And then overall construction percent complete for everything we're doing out there. We're about 63% complete with everything. We still have, we've got 4 contracts that are currently advertised but not yet awarded. I know at least 2 of those we'll have bid openings within in the next 2 weeks. One of those bid openings is today actually for Holt number 9. And then next week on the 13th, I believe, Rushville Sugar Lake will have their bid opening. So those will get awarded shortly and be under construction shortly after that. Let's see, what else? We have 3 contracts that are yet to be advertised, 2 non-federal levies downstream of Kansas City, and then 1 federal levy, NRLS 385, which is right north of Kansas City. And so we're working through issues on those to get those advertised. Hope to have that worked out in the near future. Right now we've got 6 levees that still remain breached, and I believe all but 4 of those should have full level of protection restored prior to spring. And that's about all I got for you on levee rehab today. I'll take any questions when we get to that point.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
So with that, our next update will be Thursday, February 4th at 1 p.m. And we'll send the invitation with the links and everything out the week prior. We're going to move into the question and answer session. I'm going to go in alphabetical order by state, and we're going to allow stakeholders, elected officials, anyone that is a local, state, federal, tribal representative to ask questions on the first round, and then after that we'll move to media. Remember to unmute your phone. You may need to unmute both on the sign-in on your computer as well as to unmute your phone, or press *6 to unmute. So I'll be patient between each state to give you time to unmute your question. So moving to state of Iowa. Kansas. Missouri. Montana. Nebraska. Again, *6, computer unmute and phone unmute. Okay, North Dakota. South Dakota. Wyoming. Okay, now we're going to move to media. Again, same, we'll go in alphabetical order by state. *6, potentially computer and phone to unmute. State your name and organization before asking your question. Iowa.
Hi, this is Nick Hittrick at the Sioux City Journal.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, this is probably for John. Just wanted to see if you could comment as the conditions entering the runoff season. You've got the full storage available. Is this pretty much the ideal situation as we head into January, or would you prefer to see more snow on the ground and in the mountains as far as looking to future operation through the rest of the year?
Thanks for the question. Well, from a reservoir storage situation, it's almost ideal. We try to be right at that 56.1 million acre feet at the beginning of the runoff season, so we're just slightly below that. We are watching the development and the continuation of the drought conditions very closely. I think our first runoff forecast reflects the fact that we have very dry conditions, and we're expecting those dry conditions to persist. So we're concerned that not necessarily for 2021, but for future years, this may impact our flow support situation for the lower end of the river. So we're watching that very closely. But for 2021, as Joel pointed out, we're really looking at the most likely scenario being able to provide full navigation support for a full 8-month season. So but we are watching it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Any other media? State of Iowa? Okay, we'll go to Kansas. Missouri? Again, *6 and unmute. Montana? Nebraska?
Hi, this is Josh Funk with the Associated Press.
Hey, Josh, go ahead.
As we head into the year, how concerned about flooding should we be?
This is John Remus. Well, we're not overly concerned about it this year, but we're always concerned about flooding. It can happen. You know, we can get a hydrologic event, a precipitation event below the dams that could cause flooding that we can't mitigate. And as Doug Cluck and Kevin Lau indicated, we are still very early in the snow pack accumulation period. I think Doug said, you know, in a few days that plain snowpack can change quite a bit. So we're not overly concerned about it, but the threat of flooding is always there.
I'm going to add to that. Go ahead, Josh. I'm going to just add to that real quick.
Yeah.
That is that both Omaha and Kansas City, as Mike Doolin pointed out, we still have levees that are being repaired or are recently repaired. And the status of those levees, while they may be at the full height of their flood protection, they are not necessarily fully restored. So they may not have had an opportunity for vegetation to take hold and things like that. So while they're at the right height, they may not be providing that full amount of protection should the water levels get higher.
But it seems like conditions right now with the dry soil and plenty of space in the reservoirs look pretty good as far as being able to handle runoff so far heading into the year.
Yes, from a reservoir management point of view. Also, I know, Kevin Lau, if you would like to add anything to that discussion or not.
Sorry, it took me a lot of time on mute button. Yeah, so this is Kevin Lau with the Missouri Basin River Forecast Center. So I've taken a look at, really long-range outlooks, and, I can't be really dogmatic about this, but due to the fact of the absence of snow and the really exaggerated dry conditions out there, I would say that some indications are that locations in the eastern part of the basin, I'm talking eastern Nebraska, Iowa, eastern Kansas, state of Missouri, they're probably anywhere from 10 to maybe 30%. The chances to reach flood stage are anywhere from 10 to 30% lower than normal. Now, that doesn't mean it won't flood. In fact, the numbers I've been looking at, we're still going to have flooding in the eastern basin because that is normal to have tributary flooding. But on a normal year, a location might have, say, an 80% chance of flooding. Well, now it's going to be a 60% chance of flooding. So I still think we're going to see flooding. That just is a normal thing for the Midwest to see flooding due to thunderstorm activity or whatever. And we're bound to get some plain snow build up, and it's going to melt off. So yeah, we're going to have run-of-the-mill flooding. There's no question about that. It's just that conditions right now would indicate that the severity of flooding will be mitigated.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions from the state of Nebraska? Okay, we'll move to North Dakota. And South Dakota.
This is Jody at Dakota Media Group in Pierre.
Hey, Jody. Go ahead.
Hey, money was finally approved to start installing the snowpack monitors along the upper Missouri River Basin. I know South Dakota State University is going to be doing quite a few of them here in South Dakota. Are any of those up and running? Are you getting any details and information from them yet? And if they're not up and running, do you happen to know a timeline as to when they're going to start getting at least some of those set up and ready to go?
Hi, Jody. This is Kevin Grody from the Missouri Basin Water Management Office. We do have a few up and running. We have one in each of the 4 states, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming, that are up and working. The rest of them are going to be done during the spring. They can't really do any installation now. The ground is frozen. But there will be, I think, about somewhere between 35 and 40 that are installed during the spring and summer of 21. And if additional funding comes, we do have the capability to increase that number. Over.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions? State of South Dakota. Okay, Wyoming. Any final questions before we adjourn? Star 6 to unmute.
Eileen, this is...
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Eileen, this is Randy from the Press Dakota in Yankton. Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. I was just wondering, I know we're early in the season, but if the drought continues, water levels, what will this mean for the dam operations down here, and also things like water supply and recreation? Could those be adversely affected quite a bit?
Well, if the drought persists or gets worse, the water levels will be lower than they've been the last few years. How much, we really can't predict right now. But if the drought persists, we will dip into the conservation pool at some time during the year. There will be spring runoff. As Kevin Lau said, we're going to get runoff from snow someplace, which will raise the reservoirs in the spring. But as we go through the year, if the drought persists through the year, we will be back down into the multi-purpose carryover pool.
Okay. That was John. Okay, thank you.
Yep, that was John Remus.
Thank you.
Randy.
That's all I had.
Okay, great. Okay, any final questions before we adjourn?
Eileen, I'd like to, just make a comment here before we adjourn. First, I'd like to thank Doug Cluck and Kevin Lau for helping us out here. Your support is very important to us. And I want to thank all the people that phoned in today or joined the meeting. This is part of our ongoing attempt to more effectively communicate with the Basin, and encourage you to keep phoning in. And Kevin Grody, would you want to say something?
I just wanted to clarify something that John mentioned about lower reservoir releases and drought conditions. During a drought condition, the impact when it comes to the reservoir levels is really only felt in the upper three reservoirs, Fort Peck, Garrisons, and Oahe. Even during drought periods, the lower three reservoirs, Big Bend, Fort Randall, and Gavin's Point, are pretty much maintained in that operating pool that they're at right now. So it's those upper three or the big three that feel the impact of the droughts.
Okay. And I'm sorry, who was that was just speaking?
Kevin Grody, G-R-O.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's early in the season that this will change, but thanks for the perspective.
You're welcome.
I think that's all we have, Eileen.
All right. Thanks for your remarks, John. We did have 126 callers today, so I do appreciate the turnout. We are going to continue to provide updates. We have the weekly update on our website, and as was mentioned, the URLs for our website, which used to start with HTTP, have now start with HTTPS, and we are making those updates to our website. So if a link doesn't work, you may want to try adding an S to that HTTP, and it may come back and work for you. Our news release that covers much of what was provided in today's call was sent just before the call, and we will talk to you all again in February. Thank you.